Welcome back, and we just received a metric crap ton of changes coming to the Division 2 with the Year 5 Season 3 PTS Phase 2 patch notes. Woo, it's a mouthful. And so much of this has changed from Phase 1. Gear sets, exotics, talents, PvP, along with massive, pun intended, wholesale changes to weapons, brand sets, expertise, and optimization mechanics. At least on paper, we're looking at a whole new Division landscape, and I'm going to do my best to run through it all for you right now. This is LtBuzzLitebeer, and welcome to the channel. In case you haven't done so, consider hitting subscribe to stay up to date on Division news, and while you're at it, ring the notifications bell to receive my latest upload alerts. Likes, comments, shares are greatly appreciated, and here we go with the latest from the Division. Okay, keeping with my standard format that I normally revert to when I'm doing these patch note reviews, I will of course include a link to the full patch notes down in the video description. Leave yourself a huge block of time because it is a very long read, but I'm going to be breaking with normal tradition of just showing the patch notes up on screen. Instead, I'm going to be showing all these various Division movies and clips. I'm going to be verbally going over the patch notes and showing these very small boxes of basically what I'm discussing. So first off, we're talking TU20 PTS Phase 2 patch notes. By the way, 94 gigs on PC if you don't have the PTS yet downloaded, 12.62 if you already do, and it's starting tomorrow, January 19th at 1 p.m. CET and going through Monday, January 22nd, 1 p.m. CET as well. So that's for 72 hours. Okay, on to the nitty-gritty. We're talking new gear. Palisade Steelworks is up. This is a brand set. One piece equipped gives plus 10% armor on kill. Okay. Two pieces equipped gives plus 60% health. Man, health has not mattered in the Division 2 in what feels like ages. And then 3 pieces equipped is plus 1 skill tier. You also have a named chest and backpack talent. The named chest talent is Combustor, which is perfectly explosive delivery. Obviously, you've got longer arm time, greater range, and reduced explosion cooldowns. And then you've got the named backpack proxy talent, which is perfectly tamper-proof. You're talking arm time of 2 seconds and cooldown per skill 8 seconds. Next up is the Aegis gear set. We're talking 2 pieces equipped, gives plus 70 health. That's the way they list it. I believe it's supposed to be plus 70% health. Again, I don't place much value in health. 3 pieces equipped gives plus 15% total armor. I do like that. 4 pieces equipped, you get the new Stoic talent. Get plus 3% damage resistance for every enemy that is targeting you. The bonus is multiplied based on number of agents in your group. And of course, you also get chest and backpack talents. Chest bonus, Deceit. Enemies targeting your decoy also count towards the Stoic damage reduction bonus. And the backpack bonus talent is Polyethylene Plating, increased Stoic damage resistance bonus from 3 to 4%. And finally, we have the Rugged Gauntlets. These are exotic gloves. The talent is Iron Grip. This is a waste. Minus 50% recoil penalty when hip firing. Also, minus 50% recoil penalty when blind firing from cover. And with the Division 2, I find that there are no recoil penalties. There's basically no recoil in the game. So I think these are going to be a waste. All right, next up are new weapons and talents. Exotic weapons are first up. You've got the Vindicator exotic rifle. The talent is Ortiz Assault Interface. While scoped, the weapon will highlight a random body section of each enemy. The weapon deals plus 75% weapon damage to highlighted body sections. The weapon stats and mods, you've got a mag mod plus 5 mag size, muzzle mod plus 10% optimal range, underbarrel mod plus 15% weapon stability, and the optics rail is plus 15% weapon accuracy. You've also got the Mosquito exotic pistol. The talent is Mosquito's Song. Hitting an enemy applies a stack. Stacks are shared between players. Interesting. At 10 stacks, the enemy will forcefully target the last player to apply a stack for 5 seconds. Stacks deplete every 5 seconds. Activating the effect on an enemy will remove all stacks from other enemies. The weapon stats and mods are as follows. You got a mag mod plus 15% reload speed and a muzzle mod plus 15% weapon accuracy. We also have 3 named weapons and talents. We've got Behind You, which is a weapon talent. Deal 40% weapon damage to enemies that are not targeting you. You also have a marksman rifle called the Brutus, which is an M700 carbon. The talent is Perfectly Behind You, which you deal 60% weapon damage, again, to enemies that are not targeting you. And then the rifle is the Whisper, which is an M16A2. Oof, the talent is Perfectly Behind You again. Deals 60% weapon damage to enemies that are not targeting you. If there's one weapon in the Division 2 that I just absolutely avoid, it's probably my first pick, the M16A2. Now on to Project Resolve. We have 2 balancing changes for PvP. First off, in Conflict, they removed turrets from Conflict spawn points. And secondly, in the Dark Zone, going rogue in a normal DZ now has a 3-second activation timer. Activation time for invaded DZ remains at 0.75 seconds as before. Also, as part of Project Resolve, we have weapon and gear talents being reworked. Listen to these. Dr. Home changed proc condition back to target killed from target headshot. Huge one up next, PvP only fireworks show festive delivery. That has been blowing up, pun intended, PvP. What did they do? Well, previously, concussion grenades became festive grenades. Hitting an enemy with a festive grenade would cause explosions to happen around 2 other enemies within 20 meters. The change is that explosion is going to happen around 2 other enemies now within 10 meters. So they've halved the range and they've also halved the damage, dealing half damage. Next up is Unbreakable. Talent change reverted back to 50%. I guess previously it was 55% armor repaired. This is in PvP only. Next up, System Corruption, 4-piece bonus changed to plus 2% bonus damage. It's up from plus 1%. And Intimidate, each stack increases total weapon damage by plus 4% damage. It's down from plus 5%. All right, let's talk weapons. And these 2 little changes here were kind of slipped in there, and they don't have much fanfare to them, especially this first one, but it is huge. All exotic weapons' 3rd attributes will now be reconfigurable. Yes, I love that. And also, the Carbine 7 and Stoner LAMG will no longer drop with a preset talent. All right, hold on to your butts. Next up are the weapon archetype changes. These are wholesale and lengthy. First up are the assault rifles. I love them in the Division 2. Who doesn't? ACRs are going to see a plus 10% weapon damage. AKs, plus 10% weapon damage. Wow, they already hit pretty hard. All the AUGs, including the Bighorn, plus 10% weapon damage. All the CTARs, including the named Rail Splitter, plus 10 mag size. The F2000s, including the named Shield Splinter, get 2 changes, plus 50 on the RPM and plus 10 to the mag size. That should make it more viable. All the FALs, I admit I don't use them very much, plus 5% weapon damage. All the G36s, plus 50 RPM. The named Honey Badger and Savage Wolverine, plus 5 mag size. So very small change there. All the Mark 16s, another hard-hitting AR, plus 10% weapon damage. All the P416s, including, listen to this, the Eagle Bearer, plus 50 to the RPM, and the PDR Test Subject and Capacitor, plus 10% weapon damage. But we're just getting started because next up are the LMGs, which are seeing wholesale buffs across the board, which is a welcome change. They've been underpowered forever. First up is the Stoner LAMG and the named Quiet Roar, plus 20% weapon damage. The Blue Screen, plus 10%. The L86s, plus 20%. The HKGR9s, plus 20%. The M249s across the board, plus 20%. The classic M60 and M60s in general, plus 20%. The MG5 used to rock that one back in the day, but it became underpowered. Well, now it's getting a plus 20% weapon damage buff. Iron Lung, plus 10%. The Negevs, including the Bullet King, love the Bullet King, plus 20%. All right, I'm definitely going to give that one a shot. And all the RPK 74s, plus 20% across the board. Some of the SMGs also received some love. You've got the AUG SMG versions getting plus 10% weapon damage and plus 25 RPM. The CMMG Banshee and the named Grudge, plus 5% weapon damage and another 50 on the RPM. The MP5s, plus 6 to the mag size. The MP7s got plus 5% weapon damage and plus 50 to the RPM. The T821s, plus 10% weapon damage. The SMG9s, plus 50 on the RPM. All the Tommy gun and named and exotic versions, plus 10% weapon damage. And the UMP45 across the board received a plus 10% weapon damage. Moving on to rifles, the ACR SS, plus 10% weapon damage. The Ruthless and Merciless, I used to rock those back when the game first came out, plus 10% weapon damage. The UIC-15 Mod 2, plus 30% weapon damage. Yeah, it was pretty underpowered. All the M16A2s across the board, plus 30% weapon damage. I wonder if that's going to be enough. You also have all of the MDRs, plus 10% weapon damage and plus 20 to the RPM. The Mark 17s across the board. What a great rifle when the game first launched. Plus 25% weapon damage. All the SIG 716s, plus 25% weapon damage. The Ravenous, plus 10% weapon damage. The USC 45 ACP and the replica version, plus 10% weapon damage. And the Resolute Mark 47 and the named Harmony, plus 20% weapon damage. And the final weapon archetypes to receive some buffs, we're talking marksman rifles. The M700s, plus 20% weapon damage and plus 8 to optimal range. Interesting. Same kind of changes with the Model 700, plus 25% weapon damage and plus 8 to optimal range. All the SRSs, plus 30% weapon damage. The Mantis, plus 15% weapon damage. All right. The SR1s, plus 30% weapon damage. The SVDs, plus 15, and Tactical 308 and the Scalpel, plus 20 to RPM and plus 8 to optimal range. I don't know how we continue on, but we simply must, because next up are brand set changes. These are aplenty as well. Take a look at your screens, because we have beautifully supplied Division 2 graphics to feast your eyes on. All right, Alps Summit, you're going to pick up 10% skill duration on the 2-piece and triple your skill haste on the 3-piece. I like that change. China Light, you're going to double the skill haste at 2-piece and double the status effects on 3-piece. I like those changes as well. Electrique, triple your SMG damage on the 3-piece. That's the only change. That's quite a sizable change. Empress International, they highlight plus 10% skill damage change on the 2-piece, but it's the same between the two. That must be a typo. Hana Yu keeps skill damage on the 2-piece at plus 10% and doubles weapon damage to 10% on the 3-piece. Murakami picks up 10% repair skills on the 2-piece and 10% skill damage on the 3-piece. I like that doubling right there. Richter and Kaiser, admittedly, I don't use that very much, picked up a whopping 15% explosive resistance on the 2-piece and doubles repair skills on the 3-piece. That might be interesting to work into my builds. And Wyvern Wear picks up 5% status effects on the 2-piece and doubles skill duration. I'm not a big fan of skill duration on the 3-piece. On to slide number 2, because you know we've got plenty more gear sets to discuss. Let's take a look at these changes. 511 Tactical, they're going to triple your health bonus on the 1-piece. Again, it's health. I just don't find it a useful stat in the Division 2. However, on the 3-piece, they're going to double that Has Pro protection from 10 to 20%. That's big. Badger Tough, One change, you're going to pick up another 5% armor on kill on the 3-piece. That's big. Bellstone Armory is going to double incoming repairs on the 3-piece from 20% up to 40%. That's big. I'm probably sound repetitive right now. Brazos is going to see more than a doubling on the mag size bonus on the 3-piece from 20% up to 50% mag size change. Wow, okay. Gilligard is going to double the armor regen. The old percentage was 1%. It's up to 2% now on the, 3-piece? But the 2-piece sees them add on a 6 times change to health. It's going to go from 10% to 60% health. Again, it's health. It's just not a useful stat in the Division 2. Golden Gear picks up 0.5% armor regen on the 2-piece. I like that. And it doubles the total armor bonus on the 3-piece from 5% up to 10%. That's clutch. Habsburg, you're going to pick up 5% MMR damage on the 2-piece and double those status effects on the 3-piece from 10 to 20%. Lingmo, 2 changes here, plus 15% skill health change on the 2-piece. I don't invest much into skill health, but it doubles the LMG damage on the 3-piece from 15% to 30%. So we're seeing a systematic increase on everything to do with LMG damage across the board for this new PTS Phase 2. And Uzina Gatika. One change, it's going to double that Hasbro on the 3-piece from 10% to 20%. And on to the final slide. This is slide number 3, starting off with Seska. One change here on the 3-piece from 10% to 90% health bonus. Again, it's health. Why? Douglas and Harding, 2 changes. You're going to pick up an extra 10% weapon stability for 2-piece and more than double the weapon accuracy bonus on the 3-piece from 20% up to 50%. Fenris, 2 changes. You're going to pick up 10% additional reload speed on that 2-piece and more than double weapon stability on the 3-piece. For anyone that has issues out there with keeping your weapons on target, I don't know really why in the Division 2 because recoil is basically non-existent, but you always want to invest into weapon stability to kind of keep that muzzle on target. There you go. Fenris is moving from 20% weapon stability up to 50%. Grupo Sombra picks up an extra 5% explosive damage on the 2-piece. Petrov, weapon handling. So that's everything to do with weapons, like reload, accuracy, stability. Picks up an extra 5% on the 2-piece and goes from 20 to 50% ammo capacity on the 3-piece. So that's a big change. Overlord, 2 changes, an extra 10% weapon accuracy for the 2-piece and triples weapon handling. That all-encompassing weapon stat goes from 10% to 30% on the 3-piece. Walker, Harris & Co. Final brand set here doubles damage to health from 5% to 10% on the 3-piece. Unchanged as part of these patch notes, you've got Y'all, Araldi Holdings, Providence Defense, and the Sokolov Concern. All right, next up are in-game improvements. This first one is quite large. It's called the Tinker Station. They say, note, the Recal Station has been reworked, receiving a streamlined flow, UI changes, and a new name. They call it the Tinker Station, which allows for this first item, mobile tinkering. The functionalities of the Tinker Station can also be accessed on the go from the inventory in 2 ways, and then they spell out those 2 different ways you can access the mobile Tinker Station. They also say expertise, no changes made following TU20 PTS Phase 1. It can be accessed from the mobile tinkering menu. Further changes in this new Tinker Station menu are listed under Recal and Optimization. First up, they've merged both functions into one tab, so it's all going to be listed under Tinker. Optimization can no longer be done up to a value higher than the value scored in the player's Recal library. Optimization upgrade steps have been changed. The player will no longer pay the full price for an incomplete optimization step. Hallelujah. Here's the example. The user has plus 10% SMG damage in the library and is trying to optimize an SMG that currently has plus 9.7% SMG damage. Since the highest value in the player's library is plus 10%, they will only be able to upgrade by 0.3%, obviously, and will only pay the material price for the plus 3% portion instead of paying the full price of an upgrade step. That is a welcome change. Thank you. Go a little easier on those mats. And finally, Recal Library. No changes made following TU20 PT Phase 1. It has received UI improvements and can be accessed from the mobile tinkering menu. I promise we are nearing the end of these patch notes. Next up, they list out as Combar Gear Lock. I think it's supposed to be Combat Gear Lock. When joining another player session, the player joining now has a 1-minute grace period before the Combat Gear Lock applies. Gear Lock no longer in effect in shooting range. The player can now swap between concussion grenades and the current specialization grenades while in combat. Hallelujah. Rogue players in Dark Zone are no longer always gear locked, but the combat gear lock still applies. Example, this means that rogue players in the Dark Zone will get gear locked during combat as opposed to PTS Phase 1, where the lock was applied for the whole duration of the rogue status. Descent is also going to see a few changes. This is a mode that I had high hopes for and have not engaged with since the first couple weeks it came out. But anyway, they added Descent outfits in the NSA store, all 4 different color variants. Interesting. Added Vindicator exotic in the NSA store. Descent talents pool rotation now has its own menu where the current rotation and available talents can be checked. The button prompt for the menu can be found within the Descent entrance AR window. And finally, the duration of the rotation and its name is now also displayed. And Descent projects, the daily project, the rewards list now also includes 1 exotic component, and weekly project rewards list now also includes 3 exotic components. Okay, I'm ready for a break. That was a ton to go over, process, and kind of wrap our heads around. Again, link to the Trello board and the PTS patch notes can be found in the video description below. I think I'm most excited about those weapon changes, overall the buffs, being able to recal all 3rd talents on exotic weapons, and the new Tinker Station, although it would have been nice to see reductions in the expertise system cost. Also, and I don't want to get into specifics, but the buffs to health percentages were overall quite a letdown, along with the exotic gloves, which lessened recoil, which in the Division 2 is a lost stat. Who knows? Maybe those can be further adjusted in the future. Not that many changes for PvP as well. You've got little sprinklings here and there, and I'm again hopeful to see wholesale changes to that aspect of the game in the near future. Leave me some feedback and I'll do my best to respond. Remember to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my future upload alerts. Likes, comments, shares are greatly appreciated. All my socials can be found in the video description. Shout out to the we're almost there, 189,000 of you that have stuck with me and hit subscribe. And until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer signing off.